Hello, LR. So I wanted to try to make a video with how to use StatCrunch effectively with some of the questions from Chapter 2, and I'll try to do this throughout the semester just to make sure that we are working smarter, not harder. So in Section 2, there were a couple I wanted to look at. I think 8 was one of them that I wanted to look at. So if we wanted to make a relative frequency distribution, so frequency is just accounts relative frequency, that's when we're looking at percentages. You don't actually have to count all these up. Let's have StatCrunch do that for us. So whenever you see this little icon, I guess, we can open up that data in StatCrunch. And then once it's in StatCrunch, I can tell it to make a table for me. So under Stat, there's tables, and I'm going to do a frequency table. And within it, it says it's going to do a frequency and relative frequency, so that's great. I have to click on var1. This is the column that I wanted to make a table of, and I'm just going to hit compute. And so it gives me the information that I need for this problem. I get a count and I get a relative frequency. So that would help with, let's say, like a number 8, given the raw data, to find a frequency and relative frequency. The other one that I wanted to look at, I think, was number 12 from section 2. And it's totally not 12. I know what number 8 was. I think some of the ones in the beginning, maybe it was number 2. Finding the class width, midpoints, and boundaries. So this is one I've already done. But when you're looking at the class width, if you look at your lower bounds, so from 35 to 39, the class width is 4. It's the difference between your lower bounds from two different classes. The class midpoints, they are found by taking the average of a class. So if we look at 35 and 38 and just take the average, I'll bring up my calculator. So if I'm just looking at the average of 35 and 38, so I'm going to take that number, divide it by 2, and that gives me my first class midpoint. From there, I don't have to keep finding the average because I know that the class width is 4, so I'll just add 4 each time to find the midpoint. And then the class boundaries. For the class boundaries, it's just kind of what's in between these things. Like in between 38 and 39 is 38 and a half. But where we start off on the very first one is just a half below that lower boundary. So again, that would be the 34.5. And again, since our class width is 4, we just keep adding 4 to find all these boundaries. So hopefully that should help with some of the ideas in Chapter 2, Section 2. Let's look at one more. I think I found my right list. And I'll look at something like number 5. Again, so this is computing the frequency of each one of these. That one we've done just by going to StatCrunch, Stat, and then Table. And make sure the other one that I wrote down was used. So on this one, we have all this data and we went in and do a frequency of it. So the lowest class limit is 126.1 and a class width of 0.2. So I'm going to show you a way of how to do this data, or use StatCrunch to help us out. So if I want to make a table out of this, but be very specific with the class width, I can actually make a histogram. We study that in this section as well. But if I make a histogram of the volts, so that's what I'm going to select. I want to start with, they said 126.1, and I want the width to be the 0.2. It will give me the information that I need to know. So in between 126 and 126.3, I have 1. When I look at the next one, my frequency is 7. So it's giving me those counts. So this is just a way that we can use the histogram to help us out on a problem like this. Notice that the lower bound, this one goes from 126.1 is my lower bound, up to 126.3, but not including 126.3, so it has that parentheses. So my next class would start at 126.3 because of the bracket. So hopefully this gives you some insight on how to use StatCrunch for some of the ideas in section 2.